And like so many people in this room, I have to say I was very disappointed with the outcome of the UK referendum, which I have to say are going to have far-reaching ramifications for a number of companies, industries in this country. And that's not to say that I believe that the EU is perfect. Far from it. I believe that it needs reform and it needs to do less and do things better. But I'll never forget in particular waking up that morning and hearing the outcome of the referendum, and I have to say I was quite simply astounded with the result. It took hours for it to hit home, in particular to find that our neighbour shot themselves in our foot and the impact that that's going to have on us as a country. But I suppose if I'd reflected for a period of time on the kind of engagement that I had with family and friends in the UK, I shouldn't have been so surprised. And one person in particular stood out in my mind, somebody who went to college with me here in Dublin. And she very much was a liberally minded individual. And I asked her how she was voting some number of months away from the referendum date. And her response to me was, out. And when I questioned it, she reasoned with me that it was because of the immigrants. So when I spoke to her a little bit more about it and told her that she was an immigrant in Ireland, that she was educated in Dublin, even though she was from Liverpool, that whole fact seemed lost on her. And then she responded to me that they're taking our jobs. And right there and then, I suppose it really struck me, you know, how polarising elections have become, and in particular referenda in recent years, and how they've been driven by division and hate. And I suppose we've seen this over the course of the last few months in Austria, in the elections there, and to a lesser extent in the Italian referendum, and of course to a greater extent in the US election with Donald Trump. And it certainly is a regrettable feature of international politics, and while it is a broader issue, which isn't the focus of tonight's meeting, there's no doubt that the consequences of such political shifts are. Because there's no underestimating whatsoever the potential threat a hard Brexit will have on our economy, an economy that is so dependent on a close trading relationship with Britain. And just to put it in perspective, the UK is the second largest economy in the EU behind Germany, and it's the fifth largest economy in the world. But more critically, it's Ireland's special relationship with England, and the fact that it's our biggest trading partner, with over €1 billion in goods and services being exchanged between our countries on a weekly basis, and the fact that there are 200,000 Irish households dependent on the relationship, that really sums up the breadth of the challenge that is facing our country. So I feel that it is absolutely critical that we keep trade open with the UK for as long as possible, but crucially that we try and negotiate a special position deal with the powers that be in Europe, which recognise our unique trading and historic relationship with the UK. Because if Europe insists on a hard Brexit, the impact on us as a country, and particularly the retail industry, which, as the Minister has outlined, is the largest private industry employer in this country with 282,000 people dependent on jobs in it, it could very, very well jeopardise the 42,000 Irish businesses that survived the recession, of which 83% of those are Irish owned, and 75% of those which are family-run businesses that provide 282,000 jobs throughout every village, town and city in this country, and contribute 5.7 billion on an annual basis to the Exchequer. And although as Ireland, we all know what the last number of years have been like, and the fact that we have encountered similar economic challenges in the not too distant past, and we certainly overcame them with that unique resilience that Irish people seem to have. It is frustrating at this point in time to see that our mettle is being tested again, and the fact that we're thrust into another economic debacle not of our making. But at this juncture, it certainly would be useful if the UK could provide some sort of clarity on their exit and disclose, I suppose, their post-leave plans, which would make it easier for us as a country to strategise to stave off the worst excesses of post-Brexit hangover. But it's very hard, I suppose, for us as a country to expect any degree of transparency, given that the UK don't exactly know what they're doing and how they're going to do it. So from the date of invocation of Article 50 to the actual leave date, we'll be facing years defined by uncertainty, unpredictability, and I suppose a period of destabilisation as well. And there's no doubt economic growth figures have or will be adversely affected into the future, and despite the best efforts that are being made by government and state agencies. But early indicators, in particular in relation to the retail industry, are worrying for us. Because last month there were 2 reports that were released relating to the industry. One from the KBC Bank, their Consumer Sentiment Index, and also the Visa Spending Index, where both recorded a downward trend for the industry. And they concluded that in December 2016, overall expenditure by householders was down. There was a fall in consumer confidence, which marked a 22-month low. Online spending was up by 15.4%, and most of that was focused on purchases being made on British retail operations. Face-to-face spending was down in shops for the 3rd successive month, and clothing and footwear didn't report a rise in spending at all, which is unusual given that it was over the Christmas period. And then you look at the situation in the UK and the fact that their statistics are a little different, in that consumer spending rose by 2.6% last year, and in Northern Ireland, where they recorded a 3.3% increase in employment. So it's clear at this point that there is a leak in spending to the UK, and it's hurting Ireland. And you know, the fact of the matter is that this will probably continue, at least in the short term. And I have to say, you know, there has been a change in terms of consumer trends, and that leak is being aided and abetted by the virtual phenomenon of online sales, and the increase of that, and certainly the return of cross-border trade, which is almost always driven by the devaluation of sterling, which is making it more attractive for people to buy in the UK. And I was only in Newry recently, and I saw shops advertising pound for euro parity, which obviously is presenting a big challenge to many of our members. But that's not just me saying it either, about online situations and the fact that the figures are up with people buying online. Recent figures have been released whereby €850,000 is being spent every hour online in Ireland, and regrettably 70% of that money is going out of our country. So when you consider then that 17% of Irish SMEs are not online, and of the remaining 83% that are online, that 75% of those cannot process payments on their websites, it's clear that the challenge to retail is enormous in this country. But more broadly, the further depreciation of sterling will continue to push up Irish import prices and make exports less competitive, which obviously poses challenges for Irish brands, as their equivalent UK competitors will now be more cost competitive than our products. And while new markets can be developed over time, which I understand Enterprise Ireland are doing huge work in this regard under the direction of Minister Micheal O'Connor, and they're certainly busy intensifying their efforts, I feel that the UK is simply too large a market for Irish companies, and in particular for food and drink companies and exporters, to lose their market share. But particularly when you consider the cultural sameness and the consumer tastes, and the fact that there are similar packaging requirements between the two countries. So, you know, what might be left as a consequence of that is the knock-on effect will be that different cost models will emerge, when traditionally the UK and Ireland were seen as similar markets. And the potential change of supply terms and lead times will also add to the cost of goods, which in turn will affect retailers and their profitability and competitiveness. But in the longer term, the outlook is a much changed marketplace and trading relationship with our closest neighbour. And despite what Theresa May has had to say about no hard border between our jurisdictions, it's very, very clear to me that from EU pronouncements that some form of border control could very well be implemented in the aftermath of a hard Brexit. So in practical terms, if that does happen, you know, it will provide a bureaucratic and logistical nightmare for anybody who's importing goods and products between the UK and Ireland, but more particularly between north and south. We could be looking at long delays, queues of trucks at the point of entry, which in turn will affect the cost of goods and put pressure on margins that currently don't exist. But I have to say, it's not all doom and gloom, and I think tonight provides a great opportunity for us to discuss these issues. And for that purpose, I want to commend Minister Micheal O'Connor for getting the conversation started here in South Dublin and putting the issue firmly on the agenda in her work in the department, which many of you might not be aware of. I know because I've been involved in a number of events that the Minister has hosted and for us. But I think, it's very useful to get everybody's engagement here, because we need to bring solutions